Gentlemen, welcome back to Mids from the middle of the Midwest. I'm your host, Nixon the Dark, the wartime sexual marketplace. We're going to discuss this concept over the next handful of segments. Anybody observing politics, culture, economics, sex, dating in 2025 is noticing massive disruption compared to what we're used to. It seems as though we're experiencing something akin to a psychological Black Death, or we're on the precipice of total catastrophe. I agree with those who are anticipating a worldwide population crash and ensuing economic crisis. But even people who think that is ridiculous would still agree that we are dealing with some sort of catastrophe in the way men and women relate to each other. One of the key distinctions that will help us understand the situation we're in is comparing today's environment, what I'll call a peacetime sexual marketplace, with what we inherited from our ancestors going back for eternity, for however long there have been human beings, which was a wartime sexual marketplace. The transition from wartime to peacetime is a little inexact, but a few factors have played a prominent role. Industrial revolution increased the standard of living for all human beings, even if it went at an uneven pace for various groups. Technology, computers, the internet, on top of that, hormonal birth control, and you may say new societal norms, though I suspect that the norms grew up out of technology. All of these things created a peaceful, abundant world that we now experience. The wartime sexual marketplace doesn't refer to a specific war as though like World War II or even like a tribal war. Rather, the word wartime is a good designation for helping us understand the extreme hardship that our ancestors had to survive under. Threats of war, along with extreme physical hardship, living on a farm, working on a farm, especially before technology, must have been a son of a bitch, must have seemed a little bit like war in terms of the amount of strain and trauma that men had to deal with on a regular basis. Other physical threats, the lack of protection by way of technology, the lack of security, all of these things that would constitute threats that all human beings would have had to deal with on a daily basis during the wartime sexual marketplace, many of which have vanished in this peacetime sexual marketplace. When you had those threats, men had one distinct value and one critical secondary value that made it such that the interplay between the sexes seemed more amicable, seemed more capable of fostering love, seemed more conducive to both sexes understanding how they needed each other because they actually needed each other. The first and most obvious is physical protection. When you didn't have all of these amenities that we have now, things like walls even and locks on doors, men provided this critical role such that all men were viewed and accepted as stronger than women and capable of protecting women to varying degrees. Now, inequality between men, that's certainly a given, but a woman would look at a man and say, that man is capable of protecting me because in this harsh environment, this wartime environment, or this environment of strain, hardship, and scarcity, I know that I cannot protect myself. So fill in the blank man is at least capable of doing that for me. So that is the first and most critical value that men had for most of human history. The second, and a little bit less critical, but still very prominent in how the sexes dealt with each other, is economic earning power, for lack of a better word. Men would be Men were capable of earning in a way that women were not. Obviously, we all know that's not the case anymore. Now that women have their own economic prowess and do not have the same level of hardship and threat that they must toil under on a daily basis, those constraints that we used to labor under, they're gone. They're gone. Yet we evolved for that environment, and you don't necessarily readapt in the course of a few decades. That's not how the machine is built. We'll continue on these topics to flesh out some aspects of the peacetime sexual marketplace, as well as the many implications of this abrupt transition. It seems long because it's been our entire lives, but it's been brief in the span of human history. So give this some thought. This notion of hardship that used to be gargantuan and has now been minimized through our own achievements, and how that has impacted how we deal with each other, both in terms of sex and relationships. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, and final thought. Even though the sexual marketplace was different several decades ago, centuries ago, in this way that I'm describing, it does not mean that there was some sort of equality that we had in the past that we're trying to get back to. That's not really a thing. The nature of hypergamy is such that it forces inequality amongst men. It's a filtering mechanism that does not tolerate equality. But there was a stability to the nature of the inequality that all men dealt with, understood, and accepted prior to the peacetime sexual marketplace that may not have been to all of our liking, but seemed to be a set of rules that we understood and knew how to play within the constraints. The peacetime sexual marketplace, it's hard to say that we have an established set of rules that all men understand and agree to, or at least even if they don't agree to, understand that they have to play by them. Take care.